G'day community, Lekdog here, introducing, I won't do this every week, but I'll do it for the first one, introducing this new podcast. As you'll see from the title, I talked to Paige Cardona of Supercoach Paige fame, and now Fox Footy's, head of Supercoach really, in terms of content. That's for AFL, NRL, racing, you name it, BBL, she does it. Fantastic to talk to her about how she started, how she got into the media industry, the trials and tribulations, and just why she does what she does and what it's cost her and what she's gained from it. It's a great chat. I hate it when podcasts do these sort of intros, but it's the first one, so I thought I'd put it together for you, let you know what you're in for. I'm going to be talking to community members from AFL Fantasy, Supercoach, Daily Fantasy. We've got heaps and heaps of guests lined up, which I'm super excited about. I'm super excited to bring to you while we don't have any football. And before we get into it, I just thought I'd shout out the Jock Reynolds Evolution League. If you haven't heard of it or you haven't played, jump on jockreynolds.com.au. We're running our own fantasy game on Thursdays. We'll release 2 team lists for a stream on Friday. On Friday, we will be streaming those 2 games, simulated games on AFL Evolution, and commentating over the top. The stats from those games will get collated and scores will be applied to players. It's just like Supercoach or AFL Fantasy. You pick a team from the salary cap from all 4 games on the day, or all 2 games on the day, all 4 teams. And the winner of the overall round and league by the end, we're hoping to get some prizes put together for. So the next couple of weeks are going to continue to be tweaking and trialing new things for the new game to launch. I think it's on the 16th the new game launches. So that's when it'll all kick off again and we'll really have honed in the skill. But it's super fun, so it's free to play. Jump in, sign up. You jump into the article on the website. There'll be a link to where you can put in your team selections within the salary cap. You can pick a team from any of the games playing on the day. So there'll be 4 teams, put a team together from those 4 teams. It's a lot of fun. We're having an absolute ball. We've had over 150 people playing already, and yeah, so jump in. We love to see you while footy's off. Anyway, that's enough from me. Let's go to my chat with Paige, which I did just earlier today. I hope you enjoyed. I had an absolute ball talking to Paige. Paige Cardona, welcome to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you.
Alexi, thank you for having me.
Well. I think that's the first time you've called me Alexi. It's normally Lekdog or Bay.
It is. It's very true. I thought I'd be formal, but it's not really working out for me. So we'll just revert back to old times. Yeah,
let's just keep it how we know. Let's keep it comfortable. But maybe not as comfortable as normal. Other people do have to listen to this.
That's very true.
So Paige Cardona, for people who don't know you, you're effectively the head honcho, or part of the team that does all the Fox Footy fantasy content. Tell us about that. Tell us about what you do. What do you do? How do you describe it? Probably better than how I just did.
I basically head up Supercoach content for all 4 Supercoach sports. So that being AFL, NRL, BBL and racing for the entirety of the Fox Sports and Fox Footy product line. So it's a pretty big gig. It's with 4 sports to write about, there's always something happening in the fantasy world. So obviously listeners of this show would be very familiar with me, I guess, from an AFL perspective, and then pushing into sort of BBL and racing, which has come into a bit more of the mainstream. But certainly no one would know me for my NRL writing, that's for sure.
It's okay. No one listening is an NRL fan. Unfortunately, we've done tests.
We've tested this cohort.
Yeah, we used to have great NRL content on the site, but we're an AFL website. But Paige,
the best sport.
It is. It is the best sport, and I guess that's why we're all interested in it and why we're talking about it today. So Fox Footy, that's a huge gig, and you've been there. How long have you been there now?
I'll be coming up to about 2 years now, so time is absolutely flying.
Well, time does fly, because I remember when you got that. It was a huge deal, and congratulations again, by the way. I know it's been 2 years, but congrats.
Thank you, Le. It was a big deal. At the time, I'd sort of thought that perhaps working in the football industry had kind of passed me by, and to come up in the way that it did, and was quite out of the blue. And it's been a godsend since, and I'm pretty fortunate to say that I've lived and breathed my dream job in an industry that I love, in a league that I absolutely adore. So I'm pretty fortunate.
So, well, let's talk about how that did come up, because you've had a pretty wide range of opportunities in sport. You're in horse racing. Was that the last job heading into Fox Footy?
Yeah, so I was at Racing Victoria and Country Racing Victoria collectively for about 5 years, and it was super enjoyable. I started off with Country Racing Victoria, which was my first digital gig. Before then, I'd been a mechanic for 6 years. Probably a lot of people don't know that, but I was, a tradie, and then I, sort of through my sort of football connections and what I was doing with my site, I landed my first digital gig, which was a real junior kind of shit show, to be honest. But it was so cool just to get an opportunity to go straight from not being a university student to getting a digital gig in horse racing, and then basically falling in love with that sport as a result, and working my way up to being the senior lead in racing at Victoria, Racing Victoria. Sorry, it was great to go from being a junior all the way to the top of the tree in digital. Was great.
That experience in horse racing, and we're about to touch on where I know you first from, way back when in Supercoach Paige days. And now you're in a role that bloody is both fantasy footy and covers racing and covers your favourite sports, AFL, and you've just absolutely nailed it, mate.
Yeah, look, I honestly, it's kind of been a bit of a whirlwind to think, where I was and where I am now. It's the biggest 180 flip I could ever think of, and I think all of us is sort of, anyone that's probably listening to this is a lover of fantasy sport and AFL in general, and for me, definitely, I consider myself to be super fortunate and very lucky. Even though a lot of that has come off the back of, probably a solid 7 to 10 years worth of, constant hard work. And, but even then, during that period, there were times where I honestly thought that it had completely passed me by, and the dream of working, within AFL football was kind of just a pipe dream. And, there were the times that kind of really got me down, because it was like, God, I've done all this work, and I've worked so hard, and I've done absolutely everything I can across radio, across podcast, as a journalist, running a business, doing this, doing that. Every opportunity that I took was unpaid. It was voluntary. It was just to get constant, foot in the door, ensure people had a good perception of me and knew, I knew if I could get myself in front of the right people and showcase my knowledge, my passion for the game, but also that personal side of it too, where, you're working in cohesive, small teams, group environments, for, one bigger cause, then I'd be okay. But, until you get that opportunity, you just kind of feel like a bit of a brick in the wall. So you just, like everybody else, trying to get a dream gig within Fox Footy or the AFL scene. But yeah, it's been one hell of a ride, and right now it only feels like it's starting to warm up.
Well, you mentioned luck there, being lucky, but being on the back of hard work, and I always find that the luckiest people are the people that work the hardest, and we have a lot of aspiring media people and students who listen to the podcast or visit the website, and they're always asking for advice, and you've nailed it in your description just there. It's you do the unpaid gigs, you work hard, you get in front of as many faces as possible, and then one day your name gets pulled out of the hat and you get an opportunity. So I think that's a really great lesson for anyone who's any of the younger people, or even not the younger people, even the more experienced people out there who are looking to get into a media role. You've just got to put your name out there and get in front of it and not always expect to be paid straight away. And sometimes it does work out for those who work hard.
It's you know what, like, you're spot on, because in particular, it's probably a good thing to preface as well that when I got the gig at Fox Footy, I was 29 turning 30. I wasn't a young buck that had just come out of uni, or that was in my mid-20s and stuff like that. It's probably one of those false pretenses that you sort of think, it's something that can only be achieved when, you're in your early to mid-20s. And I think that's probably the myth that in my head, I had and I understood, was that, okay, great, I'm now 27, 28, 29. Shit, it's past me. And you almost tend to think like a footballer, in that, okay, my best years of football are behind me. And you just go, oh my God, I'm getting closer to 30,
Well, lucky for us, we don't have to run around for 2 hours a week. We can just sit there and write some articles.
Exactly. But, it was, for those listening, it was something that came up. It was only about 4 months before I turned 30 that I started working with Fox Sports and Fox Footy. And so it was a long while. And probably when you factor in that I started up Supercoach Paige in, I think that would have been 2011. It's a long time to be doing that and holding a full-time job. And you know what that looks like, because you do that with Jock Reynolds, and you do that with your job at racing.com, and with all of that combined, you're almost trying to live two different full-time gigs.
Well, yeah, I want to touch on that now. There's actually two parts that I want to touch on. We'll touch on the first part. Let's talk about Supercoach Paige, because there might be people out there who don't actually know what Supercoach Paige was and is. How did it start? Why did it start? And what was your involvement? Obviously, it was named after you.
Oh, geez. You know what? It's funny because sometimes, I still get pulled out in the middle of the street, or in meetings with different people, or girlfriends and stuff of mine that are seeing guys, and they're like, oh, Supercoach Paige, prove it, and they'll be like, can you quickly FaceTime me so this guy I'm seeing can knows I'm legit? And I'm just like, okay, whatever.
Amazing.
It kind of all it became something. It was almost like a fairy tale, that. This sounds a bit like a head wobble, and it's not intended, but it kind of went from being nothing to instant overnight. And it all started off with, so probably, I reckon it goes back to about 2009, 2010, when Supercoach was really in its infancy still. And I was on different forums because, we're all Supercoach nerds. We love to talk about Supercoach. We love to communicate and engage others about it. And it was pretty easy for people to know who I was, because I was the only girl talking about it.
Yeah.
And so everyone knew me as, that girl Paige that likes Supercoach. And, eventually, you're talking on these online forums, and then, this is at a time, Jesus, I feel like this might be really old for some people or nostalgic for others. But when Facebook started to become really popular, and you've got Facebook groups that just started, and all of a sudden we'd all be flocking in there to have chats all the time, and then Messenger became really popular off the back of that. And there was this group of about 10 or 12 guys, and we chatted night and day about it, same way all of us do. And they just said to me one day, they said, look, you've got some really cool opinions and great things to say, and have you ever thought about making your own website and writing your own stories? And I was like, well, no, I haven't. So basically, made a website. I had a friend that dabbled in a bit of graphic design that came up with a logo for it. And, it was like, oh, shit, what do I call this thing? And my whole life, I'd kind of had this sort of, everyone sort of made fun of my name being Paige. It was like, oh, Paige, as in like a book. And you'd be like,
high quality banter there, by the way. Really high quality.
So funny. And I was like, oh my God, finally I can kind of take the piss a little bit. And, I called it Supercoach Paige. And, and then the running joke off the back of that forever, for those who do know me or that visited the page often and Facebook pages along with that, would be, you spelt Paige wrong. And it was just, it was almost this, the gift that kept on giving. But, it kind of, I had a couple of the guys come on and they started writing some stuff. And in the very beginning, I probably wrote maybe 3 articles a week. And that was really a lot of the same stuff that still stands today. It was really kind of like breakout contenders, who the rookies are going to be and who your captain selection should be every week. It was really basic stuff. But off the back of that, I guess that's when my interest really picked in what digital meant and how it works. And I started sort of, I guess, self-teaching with the help of YouTube and books and different bits and pieces on how to read analytics, how to build out more things on WordPress, how to get more creative with websites, and really kind of sunk my teeth into creating an entire experience. And that sort of helped the page grow. And then also, there was a big emphasis on making sure people were engaged as often as they wanted to. And I was like, well, I'm going to be an asshole here and I'm going to take all of the traffic off all the forums that everyone used to go to. How am I going to do that? I'm going to post everything on social media because that's where everyone is, including Supercoach scores every quarter. I'm going to. That
is how I found Supercoach Paige.
And I thought, right, this is my way. This is how I'm going to attract my target audience. And Supercoach, was big already. It was a community that was very niche and really powerfully existed, but it didn't have an online presence. And I quite literally, this is 2011, so social media and social media marketing is in its absolute infancy. And websites that I did frequent, whether they were forums or there were other sports-based things, everything seemed to be, here's a reason to be on our website, to stay on our website. But off the back of that, I sort of went, well, what if we were to push things onto social media that would make people come to the website as a way of it sounds silly now because that's what we do constantly. Yeah. But back then it was just like, whoa, that Paige girl is out of her mind. What is she doing?
Well, the early days of social media, like those who adopted it early and probably podcast as a medium, those who adopted those early seemed to really boom because prior to that, like you said, it was really siloed. It was like, this is the website you go to talk to about Supercoach and you don't leave this website.
Yeah, and for me it worked out super well. And I thought, well, I've spent, I'm telling you, I think, at the time I was a mechanic. So I was earning shit money, working my ass off. And basically any spare time I had, I was reading books on social media marketing and where it was headed. I was on YouTube, learning how to build things in WordPress and understand analytics and target people. And I thought, well, I'm just going to give this a go. I've got nothing to lose. And from there, it just kind of spiraled. By the end of the first year of SCP being live, we'd had over 1 million views.
Yeah, huge.
It was just ridiculous. I had people contacting me for sponsorship and advertisement placements, and I was like, whoa, I don't understand any of that. That's something else now I've got to read up on and understand. I didn't have any sort of people around me to lean on that knew anything about advertising online. So, you know, I was kind of flying by the seat of my pants. You know, at the same time, I thought, well, what I'm going to use SCP for now, I'm going to use this as a platform where anybody that wants to write, I don't care how old they are, where they're from, whether they're male or female or otherwise, I don't care what their preface is. If they want to write and they feel like they want to contribute, well, here's the platform for you to do it. And that was purely off the back of me feeling like, shit, all I ever wanted was like some opportunity. Yeah. All I ever wanted was to be able to say something or show off that I knew something. And it's that validation that makes you feel, one, accepted into a community, and two, appreciated as well. And I think because of that, we had so much success. At one stage, I had about 20 writers writing for me. I had this wicked 16-year-old who was an editor. And, he would be subbing things. He was a boy genius when it came to, grammar, punctuation, storytelling, all of it. I had someone come on just to manage everything, which allowed me more time to put more time and expertise into the SCP show, which just kind of like took off. And, there's some pretty shocking videos still on YouTube.
There are some very good videos on YouTube, and everyone should go on YouTube, the SCP show.
If you haven't, I feel like, if you're around, if you were really engaged in Supercoach in those early 2000, 2010, so to speak, right? Then you probably know the SCP show, because it was the only sort of Supercoach show that was out and about. It was filmed from my sister's boyfriend's bedroom. It was this absolute amateur hour shit show. But that's what made it so unique and so lovable. I was flanked by two of my really good mates that have been there from basically day one. And it was just, constant fun banter. Whatever our set was, it was just like, it was being lit with like half, working lamps. There was a whiteboard in the background where we'd scribble things on, like who had the shittest score of the week. And, it was real kind of amateur stuff, but we just made do with what we had. And I think that's probably what endeared us collectively, not me, but collectively, anybody that ever wrote anything or contributed, you had this sense of pride and validation and belonging, and to know that we were sort of that go-to in the Supercoach world for so long, and in saying that too, we really pissed off the Herald Sun.
Yeah. Your good friends, the Herald Sun now.
So my very good friends are the Herald Sun now. So it's really funny to think of, I went in at some sort of stage, I was like this rogue female, like, who the fuck is, can I swear on this?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, well, great. Like, who the fuck is this Paige chick that's just come from like obscurity to have, this massive website? We had, 100,000 strong on Facebook. Twitter was popping off. We had AFL players constantly like hitting up our email to be like, oh, can we go on a league with Paige? Or can you get my league filled? Or who do you think I should have as captain this week? And then off the back of that, it was really great because I had sort of these AFL players that I'd gotten to know that would be really good with giving us sort of detail on these younger guys to help us write these articles. When the draft in itself and under 18s football and that sort of thing wasn't being covered or even close to being thought of being covered at all. So we really had that sort of edge there as well. But, we did piss off the Herald Sun because we did
You did take down those quarter time scores.
those. We did rip the quarter time scores, but there was nothing saying that we couldn't. Yeah. And I probably played that line. I played that back very straight. There's nothing you're saying I can't. And they conceded that, yeah, that's probably right. But at the same time, I suppose it was like, well, I've been banging on your door to say I will write for you for free. I'll do whatever the hell, because no one in that institution is covering Supercoach remotely what it deserves to be covered. And you guys are the owners of it. What are you doing to keep this community engaged in your product? And essentially back then, and I can say this now because of where I sit, essentially back then it was like, well, we've already got them there. We don't really need to do much.
Yeah.
And that's fair. When you're talking about resourcing and all that sort of stuff, that's fair. But I just thought, well, shit, I'm offering to write for free, to have something out there, and that probably didn't eventuate because I'd already put their noses out of place at some point of the way, and I was stealing their traffic.
It is worth noting that they do a fantastic job now in covering the game of Supercoach.
They do. It has come such a long way. It has come so far, but Supercoach Paige, SCP, however you know it as, for me, it kind of it opened up a number of doors. It allowed me to get opportunity to be on SEN, to be on Triple M. I did get feature stories on Supercoach that I got to write in the Herald Sun. I ended up on AFL 360. Even when there was for one season there, I think Jay Clark and Sammy Edmund did a Supercoach show.
The Great Supercoach show. I don't know how many episodes that one lasted, but it was.
It didn't last. It didn't last too long. But they came and did an episode with us out of Andy's bedroom for one of the SCP shows, and it was hilarious. We had such a great time. But it opened up, even doors for me. I was really lucky that I got to do a lot of work with the TAC Cup. And so I was a boundary rider doing radio, and that allowed me to work on the media side of what I wanted to do. And, on top of that, I was really fortunate that I had, someone that really early kind of took me under his wing as a football person, but also as a media person, was Robert Shaw. And he, I'll forever be grateful for the way he treated me really early on. And he said to me, he goes, look, you've got all the experience, you've got all the connections, you've got this, that, and the other. There's no use going to uni to study what you already know. Keep sticking it out, and put me down as a reference and all this sort of stuff. And he was always very supportive of me, and which is crazy to think, that someone who coached an AFL team and was a good footballer in his own right and everything that he's done sort of found me. And I could never really wrap my head around it. Still today, I still can't. But he was very, very supportive.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what we sort of spoke about before. You put yourself out there and you work hard enough and you're going to get lucky. And obviously you're a very talented media person, and old Robert Shaw just said, yeah, she's all right. And you absolutely nailed it.
It was kind of cool because even for me, I think I tend to, in a way, probably polarize some people. And, I'm not one that's ever going to play the sex card here of being male or female or whatnot. But it felt in a way that a lot of, what I was doing was in, I guess, for some people, and again, this is 10 years ago, there's so many females in media now. It's not even it's not even weird to see a female doing anything to do with football anymore. Back in 2010, there really were no, apart from Caroline Wilson, there were no female voices remotely to do with football.
No, and I think, you really used that to your benefit, as you described before. Like, no one was doing it, and you put your hand up and you took on that role, and I think you certainly helped open it up for a lot of media people out there, and a lot of the community. I know a lot of female journalists who have certainly watched your career and tried to emulate it, and you've been inspiring to those people. But before we get all mushy and continue loving it up for the podcast, I want to steer the conversation back to fantasy footy, because there's a few burning questions I have. And the first one is, how does, particularly when you were still working full-time and also doing fantasy footy content full-time, how did that impact other areas of your life, or was there no other areas of your life at that stage?
Oh, God, I tell you what, look, I think there's something to be said about a person who is so driven to succeed in what they do that they lose balance of everything else around them. And that was very much me. I had a partner at the time when I started SCP, and she was around probably 6 months before I started SCP. At the start, I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. This is the direction I want to go. How do you feel about it? She was like, yep, that's cool. Go for it. And this was my baby. I became so driven to constantly be better, find improvement. When you get to the top of the tree, where do you go from there? It's a long fall back down. So it was this reach to get to the very top, and then when I got to the top, I wasn't about to sort of let that go. And so knowing that that end goal was, I'm going to one day write for Fox Footy with the Herald Sun full time. It's going to happen, and that was always the direction. I literally blew up a relationship just based on, I chose what my hopefully successful dream would look like. When the ultimatum was basically given to me about 3 years after that, was that, she was very much of the opinion that you spend so much time on this, like all your time is dedicated to this and what you're doing. And, that was really hard for her. And, I respect that. There's probably other things as well, but I'm not perfect. But if you have to be able to find balance. I was obsessive about it. If you're a contributor to a website, well, then it's great, because you can do your 1 or 2 pieces a week and still go about your normal week as you see fit. But for me, I was trying to be everything to everyone, and that was providing feedback on every article that came through to me, subbing, editing, publishing, organising the graphics, organising the commercial side of it, writing the show, and then making sure I was fronting up on a Saturday morning to my unpaid commentary role at some bumfuck Tat Cup ground in country Victoria that would take me 2.5 hours to get to, and another 2.5 to get back from. And then on a Sunday, going into Channel 9 and being behind the scenes on Future Stars to help ghost write some stuff, on young talent coming through the Tat Cup. And all of a sudden, your whole weekend's gone, your whole week's gone. And, at 8 a.m, I'm back on the tools and hating my miserable 9-to-5 life. So, yeah, I had a lot going on. I don't suspect people now would have that sort of obsession over it. And if you do, you have to find balance and you have to be able to delegate. I wasn't a good delegator because I could only trust myself. I just thought, well, if it doesn't get done my way, then it could potentially be stuffed up somewhere else. And I was a bit of a control freak like that.
I don't think I've ever related to someone so much as to what you just said about learning to delegate. Oh my God, that almost killed me. Shout out to all the hardworking partners of fantasy footy fanatics out there, because you've got a tough job.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Paige, what do you love about Supercoach?
I've always loved that Supercoach really, if you're talking about a fantasy game, I love that it is the closest thing to emulating a real life performance on the weekend. Obviously, your dour fullbacks aren't ever going to score, but that is in Supercoach, and that's probably where the game probably doesn't lean itself to, is just how well those key defensive guys, what they do for their teams on the weekend, rather than how that reflects in fantasy sports. But I love the efficiency side of it. I love that you pick players based on how efficient they are with their disposal and how good they are at finding it. Or if they're not, mass accumulators, how much of an impact they can have on the game.
Michael Walters, we say hello to you.
We do. We honour you, Mickey Walters. But it is very much about, impact, accumulation, and efficiency. And they're all the things of football, from a pure point of view, that you just love as a fan. That's why I love it.
What do you hate about Supercoach? And I can tell you what I hate. Well, one of the things I hate, and there's many things I hate, and this isn't from the game itself. It's Twitter notifications. It's being added in a thread of 500,000 tweets and getting notifications for every single one of them. That's what I hate. What do you hate, Paige?
Shit. I think I've spent 10 years of being added on social media, and I can't always say it's for good reasons. But what do I hate about it? I wouldn't say there's, every action has a reaction. And I think that rings pretty well true in Supercoach. And that is that, what I hate is sometimes how invested I get in some of these players. And I've had evenings where I've completely raged over a player, having an absolute mare of a game and costing me points or ranking or a league win. Like Tom Rockcliffe. I was in a grand final one weekend, and Tom Rockcliffe, when he used to be that absolute pig at Brisbane, just constant 120 scores every week. I was in a grand final. I had Rockcliffe to play, and I think my opponent had probably someone like Gary Rowan.
Yep, great.
And that player outscored Rocky for me to lose a grand final, and I was just filthy.
I got to admit, I had to have a serious rethink of my life, and I had to change my complete outlook because, I still something I have to work on, because I was letting Supercoach ruin my weekend, ruin my days at the football. At some point, you do have to kind of, even if it's for 90 minutes or 2 hours while I'm watching the Blues lose at Marvel Stadium, you've got to take a step back at some point.
You do. I think, you get so engrossed in it, and because it becomes such a part of your weekend, as much as, going to the footy with your mates or your family, in any other setting is that, you sit there and, particularly for me, when I was at my absolute, when things for SCP were really, really, really thriving in probably about 2013, 2014, things were just off the Richter. And I was barely doing anything on the side. I was merely running the show, and the media side of it, and the writing was completely looked after by other people. It was an era in which Hawthorn would dominate every week. And as a Collingwood supporter who never really saw Collingwood beat Hawthorn for a good solid 6 or 7 years.
I can relate.
I used to hate the confliction of sitting there watching Buddy kick 7 against us, but also being like, oh, go on, kick another one.
Mm-hmm.
Go on, just kick another one. And he'd be like, no, stop that. And you'd be in this constant battle of like confliction and emotions that, it's warped.
I've been at the hands of many Dane Swan destructions, but I had him as captain, so like it was okay.
Yeah. You excuse those little things. That's how I feel about Paddy Cripps at the moment, actually. Yeah, so
the great man. Please sign an extension. So Paige, my last one for the day, because we've been going for a little while. Favorite all-time fantasy selection? Does someone pop out to you?
I think a lot of people would probably be saying the same thing. It's hard to go past Gary Ablett Jr.
It's very hard to go past a man that would score like 250, like often enough that you knew it was coming. It was. I mean, I still feel very. We should all feel very lucky. We're in a generation in which we have seen, Gary play the way he has, at the rate he has for the period that he has. But Jesus, what a selection in Supercoach! And even before this is, and like if you've only started playing Supercoach in the last say 5 years, then you would have no recollection of the pricing system that used to exist before then. And where like rookies would be like like your bargain basement rookies would be like 102K. Yeah, they were cheap.
And then your real rookies on the rookie list were like $84,000 or something like that. And so this is in an era where there's no such thing as a player being worth $700,000, but he was the very first player I remember being in that $600,000 figure, and everyone's going, "Whoa!"
And
whoa.
This was before like we had our hot takes, and we're like, "I'm not picking Brodie Grundy this year." Gary Ablett was an automatic inclusion.
It was like, "Shut up, take my money." Even if you cost $600,000, that is real steep. And you're talking in an era as well where Joel Selwood's dominating, Corey Enright's dominating, the entirety of Hawthorn's midfield is dominating, Scott Pendlebury. Like, the selections midfield-wise were fantastic. But I reckon if I had probably my favourite one, and maybe this comes in the way of a little bit of Collingwood bias, but I reckon it would have been 2012, and both Dane Beams and Still Sidebottom were forward mid eligible.
Yeah, Dane Beams was a gun.
Oh my God. Everyone went Still Sidebottom, and that was fair because as a 19-year-old, he was probably a vote or two off winning the Norm Smith in the 2010 grand final. So at the age of 21, you think, yep, Still Sidebottom. I remember the ownership on him was huge. And I just went for Dane Beams. I think just because he had like this sleeve of tats, and I was just like,
a valid selection reason, by the way.
I just thought, yeah, I like this guy. Still young, still a little bit raw, and I got him for peanuts. He would have been probably the equivalent of a mid-pricer now, and he just had one of the biggest breakout years I've seen in Supercoach, and he was pumping out 110s after, a starting price of like 300 grand or something. And just phenomenal.
Well, I'm going to try and do this for everyone who comes on the show, for someone related to their team of choice. Obviously, anyone listening knows you're a massive Collingwood person, so my favourite...
I'll give that away.
Yeah, you spoke.
You spoke.
My favourite Supercoach selection of all time from the Collingwood Football Club, and it's probably more to do with him winning me a season in probably one of my best ranking seasons. Neon Leon Davis, in that, it might have been 2011 when they moved him to like a half-back role, and I reckon he averaged about 98 for the year. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I brought him in, and people, I always tell this story, people laughed at me, they abused me online. He went on to average 98, and I think he was a forward-eligible player. Just gun selection, fantastic. And then he bloody never played again. He would have been locked into my team for years to come.
Oh, how good is it getting, like, blasted on social media?
Yeah, it's every day.
Wow. I've had so much. I mean, do you know what? Like, it's not all that bad, I must say. Like, yeah, I've had some pretty shit people, like, just come and say some real whacked out stuff to me. I'm just like, okay. But yeah, literally shout out to anyone that's listening that ever visited SCP, that ever said something nice to me. I appreciate it. It hasn't been forgotten, because I tell you what, I've got a long ass memory. And there's been a few people that have just, since I've started working at Fox Footy, that have just sort of, hit that follow button, and I'm just like, oh, I remember you.
Yes.
I remember you.
Look who comes crawling back.
You just, like, bygones be bygones. I'm beyond that sort of bullshit. But it's quite interesting the way in which social media works, and it can be really powerful in some ways and equally detrimental in others. So be kind to each other.
I think that's the perfect message to leave this one on. Paige Cardona, thank you very much for joining us. Do you have anything to plug?
Look, what I will plug, and one, I just want to actually plug the entire Supercoach community. There's been people like yourself, Lek. There's the Jock Reynolds team. I know myself and even the old Jock Reynolds trio. There was always a bit of friendly competition once they sort of came up, and it was nice to have a bit of, friendly banter. But honestly, in terms of a shout out, it is quite literally a shout out to anybody ever that has contributed to Supercoach. Whether it is in an official role or you're just a weekend battler like you and I have been, just talking about the game that you love, because without people being passionate about Supercoach and having their say, it doesn't exist. Without people signing up, playing the game, I don't have a job. So thank you, everyone, for keeping me employed. I appreciate that.
Fantastic. Thanks for joining us. This was awesome.
Thanks, Lex.